Hello, everyone.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hello, guys. And again, welcome back to another episode of Rewrite the Rules. We're so happy to be back again with another topic to talk to you all about. But again, we just have to say a massive thank you to everyone that's tuned in and listened. It's been so amazing, hasn't it, just to hear everybody's feedback.
100%. And we're just so happy that you guys loved the Easter episode. And we really, again, think that you're going to love this episode. So this week, we are going to be diving into the issue of food guilt and how you can start to manage this guilt. So obviously, Easter was last week, or the episode was last week. And I suspect that a lot of people probably will be feeling guilt around now, but also food guilt and even exercise guilt isn't just isolated for the seasons and the seasonal occasions. So I think this episode will just be really valuable for any time of the year.
We're going to touch upon our own experiences in which we felt the most guilt and why, on reflection, we think that was in the first place. We're also going to be talking about what worked for us in our recovery to help us remove that guilt and give some tips and tricks and obviously a little bit of advice to inspire you listeners to make some of those same changes. So I think we should begin by each sharing what sort of guilt and food guilt means to us and what our experience has been. So Natalie, do you want to go first?
When I was trying to think about this, I can pinpoint two moments in which I felt the guilt, and it was the guilt before eating foods. So it was kind of like that guilt of, well, that there's that food there that I don't allow myself to eat and I really want it and I feel guilty for wanting it. And then it was the guilt that I felt, it was always during eating it. It was never I could eat the food with enjoyment and it just be that. And then the feeling after it. The feeling after I'd consumed it and it playing on my mind just constantly. And it was that feeling that I was left with. I had labelled food as good and bad. When I was really, really struggling with how I viewed food, it was the only foods that were good to me was proteins and green veg. So foods that were bad were even things like an apple, a banana. And obviously now I look at that and I'm like, that is just so beyond anything that I could think of now, because I try and see food on like a level playing field. But it was that guilt because I'd labelled foods as good and bad. That was obviously around seasonal times such as Christmas, Easter, but it was all the time. It was going around families for dinner because I felt guilty because I was eating foods in which maybe they'd cooked with things that I didn't know, oils that I deemed as bad. And it was going out with friends for lunch because I never have a brunch and I never have this much food. This is bad food. And of course, it's the guilt that happens after you have a binge, because you feel like you've all of that willpower that you thought that you had. That's what I felt like. I felt like when I was dieting, I've got this willpower, and other people look at me like, oh my God, I don't have that willpower. How does she diet? How does she stay slim? And then you feel like, hold on a minute, that's all gone in an instant. I don't have that willpower anymore. And, no one knows that I'm doing this behind closed doors. So it was everything. I just feel like it consumed my mind. I couldn't eat with family, couldn't eat with friends. I used to sit there and think of all the things I could think of if guilt wasn't consuming my brain. I'd be like, oh my God, I'd have so much free time on my hands, because I just felt like I was carrying it around all day.
It's really interesting, like my experience of guilt. I found it actually really hard to look back at my experiences, because I think the way that I processed guilt very much changed throughout my years.
Right.
And so when I was first struggling, when I was really young, when I was 16, 17, the one single memory I have of guilt, I remember being on the school bus and just being overwhelmed with that feeling, Natalie, that you were describing, of just being so consumed and overwhelmed. And then I told my friend about it, and I told her, and she went, just don't feel guilt, just don't feel it, just don't feel bad. And I wonder if you guys had that as well, where you would tell someone and it's like, no, just don't feel bad.
Yeah, and I think I had that a lot. Like you say, you have that one defining moment when you feel that overwhelming sense of guilt. And for me, I think it was after my first binge that I had, and because I didn't open up to people about it for a long time, but when I did, it was that thing of just, well, don't feel it. And it's like, I don't know how. I literally I don't know how to remove that feeling, because it's just I felt like it was attached to me, like it was built in me now. How can I let go of it?
I think it is super defeating as well, the first time you choose to open up a little bit, to get shut down in that way, even though your friend might think that's just like a simple off the cuff response. It's actually like been quite damaging, and like the fact that you've carried it with you, you're like, right, I'm not going to be honest about my feelings again.
Literally from that minute going forward, I was like, I'm not going to talk to anyone about this anymore. What is the point? And again, it's not her fault. She didn't understand. But I remember that's how I processed that comment, which is really interesting, because then when I think about how I process guilt and how I experience food guilt, it was very much in this high functioning anxiety way, in terms of, yes, I deemed food as good or bad, and yes, like after a binge I felt bad, but it was very much, I jumped straight into problem solving. I was like, okay, how can I solve this? What do I need to do? What diet do I need to go on? What exercise routine? Okay, like staying up all night researching. So it wasn't this guilt, which I have experienced, where it was characterized by feeling like almost like you're in a hole and it's really sad and it's full of a lot of shame. It was very much, for me, what can I do about this? How can I fix this? I've done something wrong. How do I fix it? And very chaotic energy. For majority of my time struggling with disordered eating, when it comes to guilt, that's very much how I experienced it. And it was interesting exploring this topic in terms of like my experience, because I know the clients I see now, the guilt is very much characterized by, Natalie, what you were describing, this all-consuming sadness, almost like the hole you feel like you're in, and it's like you can't feel anything else. Mine was very chaotic and toxic problem solving, I would say, because obviously I didn't do anything wrong.
For me, when I try and think about guilt, I instantly associate it with regrets and like wasted effort. So the frustration and the guilt that I would feel a lot of the times, because I put so many hours into extra workouts, I'd put so many hours into extra cardio and extra step. I'd literally put in so much what I thought was discipline into restricting my food and saying no to meals, and missing out on social events. And then when I would binge, I'd literally felt like I've missed out on everything for nothing. Like this was all wasted effort. And then I'd experienced like another aspect of guilt, which was smaller, but I experienced it more often. And that was maybe that day if I didn't do as many steps as I should have that day, or it was eating another extra snack, or eating something that I didn't mentally deem super duper healthy. I'd be like carrying little bits of guilt with me every single day, but in a sick way, it was actually my source of motivation and discipline. So like you'd never catch me missing a gym session. Like me, like 3 years ago, would always like use my lunch breaks at work to go for a walk. I'd always be like on the move, really, really active, because I was using the guilt to fuel that motivation. And I think that's why when I came like into recovery and went through my journey, I was just like, why am I not as motivated to get up every single morning and go to the gym? Like, where has my discipline gone? I had to do some like inner deep work and realize actually it's because I was like being really mean to myself and was using that guilt to punish myself, to punish my body. And it's just like, especially like food guilt was just such a draining aspect of my life that took away so much happiness and so much positivity. And I definitely used to think it was so normal to have such a busy brain and just like feeling like 1,000 thoughts were like constantly running through my head each second. And it's not until I found the calm that is food freedom and sort of started like removing those labels from food and sort of like slowly ridding my mind of that guilt that I was carrying with me every single day. It's only until I did that I realized like how intense and miserable my life was before, and how amazing like this sense of calm is. And I think initially when we say the word food guilt, a lot of people's minds will instantly jump to seasonal holidays, like obviously Easter and Christmas or birthdays and things like that. Whereas for a lot of people probably listening right now, guilt is something that we have to manage each and every day. So guys, where do you think a lot of this guilt has come from?
I 100% think it's come from this narrative that has evolved around food, that has been instilled into our brains from such a young age. Nearly everyone would have been told you can't have dessert until you've eaten your main meal. Dessert is seen as like a treat. This is only a treat. So you can only have the treat when you're good. again, it's seen as this thing, it has to be, you have to earn it. You have to earn the food. We've all been given like this narrative from a very young age.
It's almost become like a subconscious act, because I think, for me anyway, everyone around me, you hear them say, I was a bit naughty, I had naughty foods at the weekend, so I'm going to be good all week. And you hearing that, I don't think I've probably had a conversation like sometimes numerous times a day with friends that ate really bad yesterday, or I had loads of bread at lunch, so I'm going to be good at dinner. That going in and you hearing that all the time, that's no one else's fault, but it is the way that we do converse with each other. So it's just going to be second nature to almost think of foods in that way of good and bad, unless you try and work on it.
And I think especially when eating out as well, when we've like paid a little bit more for our money and we're having a nice sort of meal, it's sort of been instilled in us that we also don't want to waste this food. You've paid the money for it, don't let it be a waste of money. And a couple of months back, I heard a phrase, and it was, don't treat your body like a bin. And I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And it's the way that we eat food, because we don't want to waste it. We don't want to put the food in a bin, so we instead put it in our body, therefore treating our body like the dustbin. And the fact that we need to have like more love for ourselves, to be like, yes, I've paid for this meal. Maybe my eyes are a little bit bigger than my stomach, and that is totally okay. And I can just listen to my body and just eat what is on the plate, and then that's enough. But obviously, when you combine that mindset with being brought up with parents who say, right, you need to finish your plate before you have dessert, you're not leaving the table till you finish your dinner. It's like, it's so difficult, and you can have that like argument in your brain.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's the narrative that we're hearing, not just from people surrounding us, but from the outside world. Like, I know for me, when I was in recovery, I really wanted to relearn how to eat all food groups, and I went to Weight Watchers, and it was points. I viewed food as points, and that donut has more points, so I shouldn't really have that. And Slimming World, sins. I've got to say it, I can't stand it. I literally, saying that a food is a sin is immediately deeming that food as bad. And it's like you've got to try and work against that when the world is telling you literally what you're eating is a sin.
Especially as children, like my parents always went to either Weight Watchers or Slimming World. So as a child, sort of seeing those booklets and like seeing that things were being described as sins or points, it doesn't send a positive message at all.
Literally, like, can we just like acknowledge this language, like our body as a dustbin, a waste bin, you know, sins, like points. It's ludicrous when you think about it. Like, no, it's no wonder so many people experience guilt on a daily basis for just eating food that they enjoy. And it's this language around food that just absolutely needs to be changed. Like, we can't be calling, you know, coronavirus bad and then also be calling chocolate bad. We can't be using that same terminology for something that actually is bad and then using it for also chocolate or burgers or pizza. Like, it brews this horrible guilty feeling, literally, like you've done something wrong.
Like, it's so true. Like, we're calling like something like coronavirus bad and chocolate bad. Like, unless a chocolate bar is like 60 years out of date, then it's not going to have the effect of a deadly virus. Do you know, it's just chocolate, when you think about it, is enjoyable. It can give you that feel-good feeling, and we're deeming it with the same like connotation as a deadly virus that we've been dealing with for however many years. When you think of it like that, it's actual madness.
One of like the main tools in terms of managing food guilt is changing your language, changing the story that you have in your head around food. And if you have other people around you also using that language and also telling that story, it will feel empowering for you to say something. And I think we have to check ourselves and also check other people if they're saying it in, you know, our bubble.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've really got into this way of life as well, of food having to be earned. The way that we're treating ourselves, we're no longer listening to our hunger cues, our intuition. It's like, you know, it's very much seen as you've done a workout, an hour-long workout, so you can eat now, or like this whole fasting thing of people going on diets where they don't eat until a certain time. And I know, especially like when I was dancing and things, it was like, you know, you'd go however long doing all of this exercise, it's like now you can stop and you can eat, and it's like we're not listening to ourselves anymore. We're like, it's like these food rules that we have.
The food rules, I think that would be a really interesting topic to discuss, because of course, again, the food rules definitely support this guilt that ends up brewing inside of us.
I was always told that you can't eat bananas after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The reason behind it was that it's got something in it that will keep you up at night. And I am not joking. Up until the age of 24, I didn't question it as like diet culture or anything. I was just like, oh, can't have a banana after 3 o'clock if I want to sleep tonight. And it's only until I put it on social media to be like, oh, I'm having a banana at 4. I might not, you know.
No sleep for me.
And the girl was like, what the fuck are you on about, Beth? It's not like a deep diet culture food rule, but it was just something that I just had gone unquestioned until literally last year.
That's too good. Yeah, have a banana at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock at night. It'll be fine. It's crazy though, like the fact that we don't question things. And as well, like, I'm going to go off on a tangent just for a tiny bit, but like I'm reading a book at the moment and it's all about the food rules that we've created. And it's like, we are also by society told, like from birth, how many calories we are meant to consume. When you've got to think about it, it's generalized. It will be so difficult for that nutritional information to be put out on an individual basis. We are all different.
And this is why I have a problem with tracking, because again, I know tracking has its benefits in certain domains, and I'm going to park that because I'm not talking about those domains right now. I think often with tracking, it makes it so easy to be like, okay, I have this set amount of calories. If I eat over that, then I have to compensate, and I have to almost like punish myself, and I've done something wrong because I've gone over that amount. And it's like what you were saying, Natalie, we're all so different. So how can we put this allowance on ourselves and expect our body to be cool with it?
Absolutely. And I think the problem for me, like if you've got a really good relationship with food and you like to track your calories and you're perfectly happy doing that, then fine. But for me, if you are getting to the end of the day and you are still really hungry and you are not allowing yourself extra food because like a certain tracking app told you you've had enough today, then that's when I start to develop the problem of you should probably start listening to your body a little bit more. And also people's hunger changes every day. Like I know for me personally, like especially like the week before my period, some days I could feel like I could eat a whole frigging horse. Whereas the week after my period, my appetite significantly reduces. So even if you calculated the exact amount of calories I need right in this second, an hour down the line, I might need more or less. Tomorrow, I might need more or less. So that's when I'm also like, it doesn't make sense. You need different fuel.
No sort of tracking app is as clever as our body is. Like it doesn't know... How is it meant to tell you what your insides are literally telling you, what your brain is telling you? Like, there is nothing as clever as that. And I think what we need to start questioning is it sustainable? If you are tracking your foods, could you do that on holiday and would you enjoy a holiday? If you were to take that tracking app away and to not track your food, would it put you into a state of fear? Because to me, that is a control there. That's something having control over you. You don't have control over it because it's causing you to have fear. So that to me, it might be controversial, but that doesn't sound like freedom to me.
Tracking is a rule.
I just think if you're sitting there wondering whether you've got a problem, I think you probably do have a problem. Whereas if you're like totally happy to go on holiday and not count a single thing, and like tracking is just like a little addition to your day sometimes, then carry on, go for it. But if there's an inkling inside of you that is like, maybe I've got a problem, I don't feel comfortable eating a meal and not inputting it, I can't go a couple of weeks without tracking my food, then this is becoming an issue.
We are putting this in terms of people struggling with eating disorders. Like it wouldn't work for me. You know, calories got me into my disordered eating and having disordered thoughts. So to then track again, I've got too much of an obsessive nature to do that. And I know I would stick to it, and it will become too much. And like Harriet said, in certain domains, if that's what people want to do, it's what people want to do, and that's fine. And we're not sort of stepping into that world. We're just talking about it from our experience.
Yeah, and this is where, like, again, the whole point of our podcast is to rewrite these rules that we live by and start to question them. And so I reckon there's going to be a lot of people out there listening who track and think, oh, but I track and I'm fine with tracking. I have a really healthy relationship with it. But this is where I really want you to question, is it making you happy? You want to do this forever? Does it cause stress when you go on a holiday? Does it cause stress when your friend invites you out for a spontaneous meal? These are the questions that you kind of need to ask yourself. And I think a lot of people don't. And when they do, there's suddenly there's a lot of dissonance there, because it's like, oh shit, actually, I think this tracking has actually been one of my food rules, a big food rule that I've been following. And now I'm scared to break it. And I've just convinced myself that I'm just cool with it, and it's just part of my lifestyle now.
Yeah, and I think it's a very difficult thing, throughout your journey of trying to recover, it's quite uncomfortable facing those things. Or there's been times with me where I feel like I've sort of relapsed and exercise has got a bit obsessive again, and facing those things is quite difficult, because it's not nice to feel like you've undone anything. But hey, it's part of life. These things happen, and it's all about learning about yourself. And it's going to be uncomfortable, but if you learn from it, you're going to do better.
I think self-awareness is also really key in this, and being able to sort of identify whether your behaviours are becoming a little bit more disordered and you're sort of reverting back to past behaviours, and then being able to deal with that. But also identifying whether these thoughts are coming from you, or maybe it's just diet culture. And I think that segues nicely into the link between guilt and diet culture.
Yes, and kind of putting together language around food that evokes guilt plus rules very much is the ingredients of diet culture. And I think this is a hard truth and sometimes very hard to swallow, but understanding that diet culture profits off making you feel guilty for eating certain food. It does. Yeah. Hence why, guilt-free marketing ploys and the labeling.
And I definitely feel like I fell victim to that. Throughout my sort of journey, I would always feel way more comfortable buying something that said sugar-free or high protein or fat-free or low carb, and just mentally associating that with being better, being healthier, hopefully being less calories in my mind, because I was like, that is the priority: less sugar, less calories. And I would absolutely pay double, triple the price for something because it had that labeling on it.
Have you guys ever tried the Halo? I think it's called the Halo Top ice cream.
I literally had a fear of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I loved it so much and I would binge on it, but I had such a fear of it. So I resorted to Halo Top because it was very popular, in the fitness community, because it was low calorie and high protein. And I was just like, oh my God, I can eat a whole tub of this. I can fulfill my binging fantasy, but also not eat many calories. And I was like, oh my God, this seems like the dream. So I would spend £5 a tub, fill my freezer up with all the different flavors. And it actually gave me such bad stomach problems. I hate to say it. And no one talked about this for so long until everyone's now coming out and being like, actually, it's so processed that it made us feel shocking after. So I suffered such severe bloating, and I literally thought it was a me problem. And then I realized, actually, every time I try and demolish half a tub or a tub of this stuff, I have I painful bloating for 24 hours after. So it made me realize I might as well have just eaten the damn ice cream that I wanted.
I used to have, well, I only had it twice, the 0-calorie noodles, literally 0 calorie.
I know. Yeah, they come in the sort of white pack with the clear bit at the front. Yeah.
I had them twice in my life, and both times I consumed them, I had exactly the same symptoms and experience where I woke up in the middle of the night with extreme stomach pain and like, you know, feeling like I'm going to be sick. I could have just had a bowl of noodles.
Yeah, and be in less pain. I think I used to buy these like popcorn bars, like 99, you know, like the Fiber One 99 calorie ones. Jesus, it was like
Yeah.
the agony. And I was thinking, but I would be trying to think of like, what could it be? Oh, you know, it's probably I'm just might be stressed, or no, it's the fact that like these products, they may be telling you that, you know, oh, they've got less calories, but you don't know what else is going into them. I've heard so many people with, you know, the sugar-free syrups and having awful stomach issues, and you've got to think there's a whole industry there that's going to lose out if you don't buy these products.
It's just such a sneaky way they imply that the real version of that food is bad. Like, have me, I'm guilt free, I'm this free, I'm this free, I'm this free, whatever it is, and you don't need to feel bad eating me. And so again, of course, this then makes us feel bad when we have the real thing, and of course we're going to have that craving to have the real thing. Like, I don't know about you guys, like, but with like the fake ice cream, it never tasted as good as real ice cream. I don't know what people were on about when they said it did.
But I definitely feel like I was almost a little bit brainwashed into thinking that it did taste good, because I remember at the beginning, I thought that it was amazing. And then sort of like halfway through my recovery, because I was a bit like, oh, I'm sick of spending so much money on just like processed crap. I'm gonna pack it in, because like a lot of my journey was just removing a lot of like the snacks and just focusing on having like a whole filling meal. And then a couple of months later, I was just like, oh, I'm going to try Halo Top again. I've still got some in the freezer, and it tasted crap. I just feel like it was maybe a mindset thing and me wanting to enjoy it at the start. But now I'm just like, actually, I'm consistently eating real nice food. This doesn't taste good anymore.
Yeah, girls, I have to tell you what I once did. I once made homemade cookie dough ice cream, but it wasn't like frozen chickpeas, fake maple syrup blended, and yeah, and I remember I called it cookie dough. It was like, yeah, healthy cookie dough ice cream, but it was chickpeas, and it actually tasted foul, but I remember being like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I've cracked the code.
And you're just eating it to satisfy the hunger that you have for the actual real thing. If you're making a substitute for something, you know, because I know that like I used to do it with like brownies, and I used to do the same. I used to make them out of chickpeas because I really wanted a proper brownie. But then I would make all of those brownies that were deemed to be good or healthier, and I'd eat the whole lot. Like I'd eat the whole lot, because, and then you think again, why did I not just have a proper brownie, or why did I just not have a proper cupcake or a proper muffin? And you know, it's because we're trying to substitute, and diet culture pushes that on us. And I think as well, we need to think of, we also get told like what a balanced meal should look like, that your plate should contain this, and this is a good plate of food. And as well, like we need to think food does go beyond nutrition all the time. Like we don't have to feel guilty for not having a plate of food that doesn't hit all of those sort of standards that have been set, because food can just be for enjoyment. It can.
Diet culture works very, very hard to make it seem like food is just calories and the macros and that's it, and it's just not true. It's just not helpful or healthy or nice to reduce food to a number.
Changing moment for me was when I just focused on eating what I enjoyed, instead of eating something that had like the word protein on it and stuff like that. And like a revelation I had is that I've now got like a cupboard full of protein bars that I'm probably not going to eat. Like I probably have like one a week now, just because, yeah, I do enjoy them, but I'm not using it as a substitute for dessert. I'm not using it as a substitute for breakfast. I'm literally just eating it as like, okay, this is a helpful snack on the go, and that's literally all it is. But if I want dairy milk, I'm going to go to the cupboard and I'm going to grab some dairy milk. And I think just not being constantly like, I relied on protein bars and protein shakes and protein cookies and things like that, and like protein brownies, instead of just having the brownie, instead of just having the cookie. And then I'd like pick up like a protein cookie and I'd feel totally calm and justified in eating that. Whereas I'd look at like the cookie that I actually wanted and their macros may be very similar. And I'd be like, so why am I feeling really guilty and restricting myself from eating the cookie that I really wanted to? But totally calm and feeling like totally justified in eating the protein cookie. It doesn't make sense, but it all links back to sort of like diet culture and like the marketing of it, and like how it's pushed to us as a better thing or a healthier thing or a more beneficial thing.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately that isn't going to stop. That diet culture is very profitable, as we've said. So that's going to continuously be spoken about and going to be pushed on social media. So the only thing that we can do is our reaction to that content that may be out there, or the adverts that may be pushed on us about certain diets. It's about how we can navigate our way around them and change our reaction towards them. Brings us into the next sort of thing that we want to talk about, in ways to how we shouldn't address guilt. And I think there are so many things that we immediately switch to do when we're feeling guilt, and it's things for me which I used to do, which was I would always try and compensate, and that would be by restriction. And as we've said before, restriction only leads you to one place again, and that is binge. Because I think restriction is a lot different to your normal person who has just decided to not eat breakfast. Not only when we're struggling with disordered eating and thoughts are we physically hungry, we're mentally starved. So we've got two things in which we need to heal, whereas someone that's just skipped breakfast just needs to cure that physical hunger. When you're mentally starving, the brain is always going to think that it's not going to get food, so those binges are going to be heightened. So you just shouldn't compensate. That's I think that's a main thing that happens a lot of the time.
Also beforehand as well, if you've got something going on the weekend and you're already sort of in the mindset of, right, I am going to binge, I'm going to feel really, really guilty about this weekend, let's start compensating now, before it's even happened, and then after as well, because once again you are just setting yourself up to be trapped in this cycle. Your brain is already hardwired into this pattern. So the worst thing you can do is trying to compensate, is trying to restrict with food or exercise. And also, like, don't take it out on others. Like, I was a very nasty person at times, like especially to my poor partner. I would take out a lot of my guilt on him, and he'd be like, why are you so upset today? Why are you so angry? It was like this inner guilt, and I was trying to find a way to deal with it. And an easy way, it was like, right, I'm going to take it out on him because this is going to make me like temporarily feel a bit relieved. It's not my fault, it's his fault now.
I think it's also like taking it out on yourself as well. It's like, why am I feeling this way? Where does this guilt come from? And it's like I always say, when it's binging, guilt, they're not mysteries. I know sometimes it feels like it's like, boom, whoa, where did that come from? But it doesn't happen by random. And that's good. That's a good thing to know, because then it's like, okay, well, like you guys said, like it's about reflecting. Okay, well, where did this come from? Why did this happen? But I also wanted to say how I think a lot of times as well in the guilt episode, we can compare ourselves to other people. It's like, oh, like I effed up and that person didn't F up. Why can't I be like that? Why am I such a failure and everyone else is perfect around me? And this comparison game, it's been fuel to the fire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, don't continue to spend more time on social media as well. I think post binge, I would hop on Instagram for some reason and just like spend my whole time scrolling, evidently making myself feel worse, evidently like comparing myself to others. So also like don't try and like up your screen time.
I think we can move on to giving people helpful ways in how to address their food guilt and what worked for us. And for me, it was the thing that I had to do was I had to say, if I don't let this go, I'm not going to be able to move on from it. And in recovery, there are so many ups and downs. It's not this linear road to recovery. There has to be learning experiences along the way for you to gain strength, for you to gain experience. And I had to be like, right, what I'm going to do is, this situation has happened. I'm going to write down maybe what I felt beforehand, if I was stressed, is it my time of the month? And then when I can sort of address what I was feeling beforehand, when those warning signs come up, the next time I might feel a trigger or I might feel the urge to binge, I can think, right, no, last time I was feeling this same feeling. So instead, let's sit and deal with how I'm feeling right now, instead of trying to mask it or use food to ignore that emotion that I'm feeling.
Also, just like trying to get back to your normal routine. And I know get back on track has got some negative connotations with it. It's just like, it's not starting to restrict. It isn't upping your exercise or reducing your food in any way. It's literally just trying to get back to your normal daily routine. There is this panic to be like, I've eaten this much food, I've got to change something about how I'm behaving to make up for what I've done. No, you don't, because the more you try and compensate, the more this is going to happen, the more you're going to try and make up for it. And it is just going to be a circle that you're going to be trapped in, and you won't get out of it until on that Monday or whatever, like the day after, you decide to actually change your behavior and be like, right, I'm going to continue my day on in like a peaceful, calm way. It is really hard to try and let go of guilt. We understand that. We've all been there. But the sooner you let it go, the sooner you can actually start working towards like a calmer, better week and like a calmer, better mindset.
It's so true. And like, I know you guys have just said this, but I know it sounds too easy to just say, let it go. But it's really understanding that, again, this guilt that you're feeling, it feels all consuming. It feels like your world is crumbling down and your world is like stopping. But actually the world isn't stopping. Everything is still the same. Just because you've eaten some food that you deem as bad, nothing in your world will stop necessarily. And so it's understanding that, like, whether you eat something that you deem as good or bad, it doesn't actually change anything externally. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think it helped me in just being like, okay, yeah, only thing that this guilt is doing is making me feel worse, but the world around me is still moving, so I can choose to keep on moving with the world.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's really important as well. Like we said, we're not telling you to say you're not allowed to feel guilt. Yeah. Instead, we're saying that you're allowed to accept it and you're allowed to work on it. Because I think what I said there kind of made it seem like I'm saying I was telling myself you're not allowed to feel guilt. I was just saying I can give myself forgiveness instead.
Yes. Like giving yourself permission to say, yeah, I feel guilt right now. I am experiencing guilt, and question it, understand it, and then it's easier to let it go. You have to get into that practice, because you're letting it just consume you and not doing anything about it, or go into these like, trying to compensate and restrict as a mean to correct what you've done. It's just feeding this cycle.
It's not using guilt as like a stick to beat yourself with. It's like, yeah, you can feel it, but don't continue to punish yourself with it. And then sort of like once you've got past that like initial feeling, it's then important to start working on those food rules that you've got in your mind, and like removing, you label one food as good, one food as bad, and actually just trying to like see them on an equal playing field is how you are going to like move forward and like prevent a further binge.
I know that you girls do this with your coaching work, and I definitely do it in therapy. Is like, if clients do have these food rules, then we make a plan on how we're going to break them, and we do it systematically. It's not like, okay, tomorrow throw all your rules out the window. We do it systematically. We take it in steps, but it is so important to experiment eating the foods that you wouldn't normally eat because you think they're bad. It's so that you can experience those foods beyond the nutrition, and suddenly start to bring awareness to the fact, oh, I enjoy this. Or actually, I enjoy this because I can enjoy it with my partner and my friends. I can have it because it's the season to have it. It's so important to give yourself that experiment and that time and that grace to do that. and so that you can experience those wonderful things, because hiding away and having these food rules is just perpetuating this idea that it's a bad food and you shouldn't have it, or you should only have it if you're allowed to have it, if it complies with the rule. If you ever want to work with a coach or a therapist to work on breaking those rules, you know where we are.
As well, I had to go on like a detox. There were so many people in which I followed, of which I aspired to look like, you know, fitness influencers, and I had to be like, no, I'm following that. I'm only going to follow people that make me feel good, positive, that talk about food in a way that I want to hear about it talked about. I think that's really important, and it's also, you know, trying to bring awareness as well. If you feel like friends are saying certain things about food and you're spending a lot of time with them, you know, having conversations and being like, but why, challenging them, so that also that narrative isn't being carried around whenever you're with them, because otherwise, you know, it is going to kind of bring you down.
100%.
And I find it so exciting to be able to talk to friends and talk to people who are trapped like in these food rules and deem certain foods as good or bad, and like to be able to like educate them and enlighten them and just help them have a better relationship with food as well. Like, I know these conversations can seem daunting at times, but it's actually like really positive and exciting being able to like give other people the freedom that we found ourselves.
Yeah, honestly, girls, I will say it to strangers, and I have. If I overhear someone saying, "Oh, that's naughty," I'm like, "No, it's not. You enjoy it." And then you see the smile on their face, and it's wonderful. So I totally recommend doing that.
I really feel like we could go on and we could give so many tips and we could talk about this forever. But I feel like we are going to be given so many helpful tips throughout every episode. So there's always going to be something that can be gained from advice or our experience in future episodes. But yeah, as always, I really hope that this gave people an insight on how they can start to challenge those food rules and diet culture when maybe it feels like unachievable.
Yeah, and maybe because guilt is such a big topic and it's so complex, like I said at the beginning, there's so many different moving parts. If you're listening to this and you still have a specific question, send it to us, and maybe we could do a whole episode on answering specific questions about guilt, because I think, again, it's very big. So maybe we could do a more structured video like that in the future if you guys want to.
Absolutely. And we've got like a whole list of topics that we want to talk about. It's like a mile long. But if there is anything that you guys are really struggling with, or anything that you're really passionate about, then feel free to send us a message. We might already have the episode planned, but we're always willing to accept new ideas as well.
Thank you so much for listening. As always, we appreciate you, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yes. See you later, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you love this episode, make sure you subscribe to us so you don't miss out. And if you really love this episode, we would also love it if you could leave us a review wherever you are listening to this podcast.
Also, if you think any of your girl or guy friends would enjoy this podcast, make sure you share it with them so we can spread the love.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram over at Rewrite the Rules Pod. If there's anything that you would love for us to talk about, just send us a little DM and we'll add it to our list. See you next time.
Bye.